So this is going to be a pretty quick and sloppy video because I'm already late to the party on this one, but I figured I might as well say my piece. Mostly because Nightreign is deeply poignant and relevant towards my recent criticisms towards FromSoft, which stems from my disappointment in Elden Ring's DLC, The Shadow of the Erdtree, which I criticized for having terrible implementation, confused, almost backwards design, and a general vibe that had been created by what I speculated to be a B team. A claim I would back up by reminding you that in the wake of Elden Ring's success, FromSoft committed to massively expanding their development team, and began focusing on a wider array of projects, with their latest interviews revealing that they're currently working on 26 new projects. Now, I would argue that there would be no way for the seasoned team of long-term FromSoft developers to oversee that many projects, and I believe we should expect some kind of a dip in quality in one form or another. Which sucks, because the aspect of FromSoft that I used to admire them most intensely for was their commitment to innovation and their refinement of their Souls formula. To me, every new title brought fresh innovations to the table, and every DLC brought a refinement to that content which would be passed along to the next title, with Elden Ring being the culmination of their entire catalog of their work. Taking jump attacks and stealth from Sekiro, clean, satisfying boss fights from DS3, a large, colorful fantasy world from DS2, so on and so forth. Unfortunately, there is no argument to be made that Shadow of the Erdtree even remotely attempted to refine the content to its ultimate form. Instead, we got brain-dead attempts to massively inflate the difficulty, which mostly came at the cost of combat engagement, predictable, well-designed hitboxes, and a functional camera. One thing that I've failed to even realize until just now is that Radahn Prime doesn't even have back punishes in his moveset. One of the most basic boss design qualities, which is supposed to make a boss feel more realistic and as though they're actually reacting to your movements, and it's just completely forgotten within this fight, and replaced with an undeserved boss aggression level that has Radahn attacking the player with his basic moveset, then using perfect tracking to spin all the way around to hit you with potentially a vertical slam, a move that should otherwise be designed with positioning in mind that becomes a brain-dead exercise in timing, just like every other move. Honestly, this fight has an absurd amount of glaring flaws in its design that were completely overshadowed by his one garbage double slice attack. Anyway, at the end of the day, all I can hope is that there was a B team involved in the design of this content, because the alternative is much worse, that FromSoft has lost their edge, which I refuse to believe until proven otherwise. The last bit of optimism I have left towards From is that their true hard-boiled devs are cooking up something really fucking good, while their fresh-faced B and C teams gave us the Elden Ring DLC, which really should have been a layup with all the assets at their disposal, and now Nightreign, which looks less like a layup and more like your big brother handed you a controller that wasn't plugged in and suddenly you're a fucking sweat. Because it would seem that Nightreign as we know it so far is almost entirely made up of prefabricated, tried and true assets which stood up to the test of time. And so that leaves us with two ways to look at this content, either through the meta lens of the ethics of selling us something that we already own and have already seen many times just to call it more Elden Ring content, or we can look at it from the personal perspective, which sounds a lot more like, does this game look fun? And I believe that most people have developed their opinions of Nightreign from one of these two perspectives. And to be honest, because I'm a cynical asshole, I tend to err on the ethics side of the argument. One of my final messages within my Shadow of the Erdtree was disappointing video was that, if this does mark the end of FromSoft innovating their Souls formula, then Shadow of the Erdtree was the moment that FromSoft truly sold out and pushed one of the most important pieces of content of their legacy onto a B team, so that they could begin developing 26 new money-making ventures, and then maybe get sold to Sony or whatever that whole controversy is about. And to me, the really disappointing thing about this latest From announcement is that Nightreign on a meta level certainly looks like it's another step in that direction. I would have really liked to see them announce something that completely skewed my sour opinion, making me look like a paranoid fool in hindsight, but it would continue From's legacy of greatness. However, this title really isn't doing me any favors in that regard. and basically confirms my suspicions that From is working with dev teams of several tiers of quality, and Nightreign is almost certainly made by a team of mod developers or mod tier developers, hired to sell what otherwise could have been free content. And don't get me wrong, I totally get that even as modders, they need funding, and FromSoft flipping the bill to fund their project is generally a good thing. But that doesn't mean that From isn't also going to make fucking shitloads of money off of this project that consists of almost nothing but reused assets and potentially the labor of contracted community members. I should clarify that my opinion is entirely based on just the trailer, and therefore could be completely off base if the real final project is chopped full of unique assets and boss fights. But I would also argue that this really isn't the time for From to be coy with their content. They've gone from saying that Elden Ring won't be getting any more content and apologizing for the 2-year delay for Shadow of the Erdtree, an apology I refuse to accept until an explanation is given for the quality of the content as well. And now, seemingly out of nowhere, a new game manifests itself within the dead period between larger announcements, and a project that seems to be lazy reused asset spam, likely with a $40 price tag that I will absolutely purchase without hesitation, mind you. But I do wonder if From will have the balls to offer a collector's edition for this assumedly mod level content. Now, all of that makes me seem really bitter, resentful, pessimistic, and involuntarily celibate, but let's take a step back and see things through the other perspective. Does this content look fun? Abso-fucking-lutely it does. I cannot wait to get my hands on it. This content has some serious advantages over Shadow of the Erdtree in terms of being post-release Elden Ring content, and most of it comes down to its implementation. For one thing, this is going to be a standalone game, whereas Shadow was in this really sorry state of endgame content within a massive game that takes quite a bit of grinding to reach the endgame. I would be honestly surprised to hear of a casual player going through more than a second playthrough of Shadow of the Erdtree due to the large degree of restriction in accessing the content. That and the brain-dead oppressive difficulty of the content, which makes it unapproachable and unrewarding, leaving the whole experience to be underwhelming at best. Oh, and I almost forgot the Erdtree fragments, which halt your progress even further, making the content even less approachable. I've only played the content twice, when it first came out, and then recently ran it back, hoping to have some kind of a complete switch up in my mindset. However, I enjoyed Shadow even less this time, and couldn't even bring myself to ride around the whole map to get to the finger fight or Midra. Again, I think Mesmer and Bale are pretty peak, but they cannot hold the DLC up on their own. I think the only people who even really played the DLC much at all were the challenge runners, who loaded up a backup save for each attempt, skipping all the busy work. Which again highlights my point that Shadow should have been a standalone game. Nightreign goes so far in the opposite direction that it's both a standalone game, but also has pre-made classes, allowing you to jump right into the action, albeit at the cost of having any real overworld to explore, I imagine. It seems like there's going to be some kind of looting to do, like a battle royale, but it's unclear at the moment how that will manifest. Potentially upgrades to your flask or physic tiers, but who knows. Another huge benefit that Nightreign has over Shadow is that it is made up of mostly reused assets. Shadow, on the other hand, creates this huge map of fresh visuals, like 12 new Remembrance bosses, and then completely gasses out, leaving the world a boring empty mess and the bosses underdeveloped trash. I completely forgot till now, but I also forgot to consider fighting Commander Gaius on my last playthrough, which I wouldn't have done anyway because that fight is actual undisputed garbage. And also I forgot about the Sunflower, which would have been cool as an overworld Avatar style fight, but I really don't feel the need to go out of my way to beat it when the reward is basically nothing. Also, fuck the furnaces. Maybe they're just catching a stray here, but I fucking hate fighting those things. So boring. Back to Nightreign, and we have a game that basically copy and pastes everything, including Nameless King, into the game, which could be an absolute awesome mini-boss in Elden Ring. I really don't think he's going to be much of a challenge against the combat sandbox of Elden Ring unless massively revamped, but I'm still excited to see him. And that's the thing. This game looks incredibly easy to make, but also a ton of fun, which is basically the same thing I was saying about Armored Core that nobody wanted to hear, except I don't enjoy Armored Core all that much, but if you do, that's great. And so when looking at Nightreign from both perspectives, I think it's a major ethical problem, and that FromSoft might be getting too comfortable shitting out products that lack a sense of real creativity and technical refinement. But at the same time, for the time being, the product in question looks like a ton of fun, and it'll be interesting to see how a bunch of reused bosses play against these pre-made classes. At the end of the day, I'm cautiously optimistic, but also concerned, because this title only kicks the can down the road of answering the question, what has FromSoft really been up to behind the scenes? Are they working on their next big masterpiece, or are they working on 26 shit titles that will make them fuck tons of money until their goodwill runs dry? I don't know. But for all we know, Nightreign could be the next great innovation in the Souls formula, spawned from a simple, almost accidental concept. Which reminds me of a zombie game that came out like 7 years ago. In this game, you would have to secure your fort against the zombie horde by building walls, structures, and traps, and by blasting them with various weapons you've looted. This was a simple game that I believe only cost like $20, but had a huge map and a handful of interesting mechanics that gave it a lot of potential. And so the developers used their assets to quickly and easily create a sub-game, which they would make free to play as an advertisement for their main game. That sub-game was a battle royale, and that game was Fortnite. And you know, maybe it's far-fetched to consider that Nightreign might spawn the next great evolution to Souls games, but who knows? Dumber things have happened. Fucking Astrobot won Game of the Year, when clearly Shadow of the Erdtree should have won. Not because it's actually good, I just wanted Elden Ring to win another award. The base game deserves that. And I believe the base game is largely the reason people enjoyed Shadow at all, because the base mechanics of the game are so well designed, which is a really good thing for Nightreign's potential. Here's hoping it lives up to that potential.